Hello, I'm Dr. Mike Nelson. Many of you know me from my days of practice, and others know me from the books that I write under the name Michael Dees. I was getting my hair cut at the Patriot Barbershop in Oregon, Illinois last week, and she said to me, "Hey, Doc, how come you're not telling any more of those stories? How come you're not doing it online?" Well, I got to be honest, I kind of got out of the habit of it when we did the pandemic and isolation and everything. I stopped doing a lot of public talking, and I guess I just got out of the habit. So if you liked them, my apologies. And if you didn't like them, you should probably turn this off right now. It's getting sunny now, but it's been raining most of the day. And my eldest son, many years ago, was born on a day like this, rainy, warm, springtime, April. And it was an interesting story, like many of the things that occur in our lives. My wife and I were understandably nervous about the upcoming event, and she had started having those kind of troublesome contractions that you have late term pregnancy called Braxton Hicks contractions. They made her nervous, and they made me wonder when the next one would come. Because we live pretty far out in the middle of nowhere, and there were no cell phones back then, she started riding with me when we would do house calls. Now, to say that my wife was a trooper would be the understatement of the year. She was pretty amazing. City girl moved way out in the woods was bad enough, but then she had to live with me, which I gotta say is a challenge for me. So we had been asked to stop at a house where a woman had recently had a baby to do a wellness check. No, big deal. Just stop in, count fingers, count toes, assure the mom that everything was good. It was an Amish house. And it was pretty far back in the hills, up a long valley. And in order to get in there, you had to come in a long lane, which was probably about a quarter mile long. And you had to ford a little creek halfway to the house in order to get in there. Now, I drove a pickup truck almost all the time, and so the creek wasn't really much of a problem. And because it was Amish, it was an unimproved lane. It was just dirt. And so we pulled in, and I pulled up to the where the hitching post is for the horses, and just shut the truck off and said, "I'll be right back. Everything will be fine." And then I watched her breathe through one of her contractions, and I said, "Oh, hurry." So I went in, all's well. Baby was fine, mom was fine, everything was good. Came back out. Well, lo and behold, it was spring, and it was a valley, and all the hills around there had been draining for a while. Now, where the hitching post was for the horses, a horse probably weighs about 1,000 pounds, but keeps moving his feet. My truck probably weighed about 3,000 pounds and just stood there. So in the time that I had been in the house, it had started to sink into the mud because the water table was right underneath the grass. Well, I was a little surprised, and it was sinking pretty fast, and it was getting pretty mushy. And one look at my eyes, my wife's eyes, through the windshield, she was not a happy camper. Jump in the truck, start it up. She's not coming out of here. Open the truck door to get back out, and the water started running in onto the floorboard. That's how mushy it was getting. The more the truck sank, the more it pushed the water up out of the ground. And as soon as I stepped out, my shoes filled with water and went around to the front. And it was already had sunk down to the point where the oil pan and the front bumper were setting on the ground. And it probably wouldn't have sunk any further than that, except it wasn't coming out either. And just then my wife started to have another contraction. So, like all new dads, I started to panic a little bit and looked around. What am I going to do? We're at an Amish house. There's no phone. There are no cell phones. It's a quarter mile back out to the road, and I don't even know where the nearest farmhouse is with a tractor. And about that time, there's an Amish buggy that was coming up the road. And he turned in at the lane and took his time. But eventually, after he got through the creek and everything, he came up behind my truck, and it's a fellow that I knew. And he looked at my truck and he looked at me and he said, "Well, it looks like you've stuck your truck." Well, no kidding. And I said, "Jonas, do you know anybody around here that's got a tractor big enough to pull this out of here? I gotta go. My wife is due and I'm panicking, and my goodness, my hair was starting to sweat." Well, he turned around and he looked back up the road. He looked at the truck. He said, "Tractor will tear the lane up pretty much. I'll pull you out." Well, I looked at him, and I looked at his buggy, and I looked at his horse. Now, I hadn't looked at the horse before, but I got to tell you, the horse had seen better days. Just a little mare with, I could count her ribs, and she didn't seem like she was too happy to be anywhere near the smelly truck. He said, "Just 1 minute." I said, "Well, okay, and, what am I going to do?" And so he just backed the wagon up, did a 3-point turn in the middle of the lane. Neatest thing you ever saw. Smart horse. And he backed the wagon up to the back of my truck. Well, he jumps down, goes around to the back of the wagon. He's got a tailgate that's about this wide. It's just a 2x6. He lays that down, and there's a nail sticking up out of the bottom of the wagon. It's just been nailed into the buckboard wood. And he's got a dog leash, about 8 feet long. Everybody, you've all seen dog leashes. You know what they look like. Little bitty chains, kind of cute. And he took a couple of wraps around the nail. And then he bent down and he took a couple of wraps around the bumper hitch on my truck. Well, I said, "Jonas, that's never going to work. The chain will break, the nail will pull out, or the horse will die." I didn't say the last part. I thought it, though. He said, "She'll come out. Make sure it's not in gear." So I made sure the truck wasn't in gear and told my wife to just sit tight. He got back up on the wagon, and he just sat there for a second. Horse has got its ears turned all the way around. He goes, "Hip!" And the horse leans into that, pulls the chain tight. The horse stops, lays its ears down, and he just sat there. And then he said, "Now hit!" And I have never seen anything like that before in my life. That horse got right down in the mud. Right down. Just leaned right out, legs way out to the side, just crawling and digging like that, and just a snorting and puffing and throwing mud 15, 20 feet in the air. Just, you think a tractor will tear it up. Well, apparently a horse can too. And the truck came out. And he didn't stop. And I was running along beside the truck. I could barely keep up. Of course, until I got to the creek, and then I had to wade. Well, he didn't stop until he got all the way out to the lane. And I got there, I was a little out of breath, and I said, Jonas, that's the darndest thing I ever saw. That must be some kind of horse. And he looked down at me and he said, this is a workhorse. It knows how to work. And I said, well, what do I owe you? And he said, I was thankful to be able to help. You have a good day. Shortly after that, I became a father for the first time, but it wasn't without a little sweat. So I hope you liked it, and I'll be more regular with these from now on. Thank you.